All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we are going to be in the 147-pound division, where there is a whole lot of nonsense flying around between two of the best fighters in the world. The number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Terence Crawford, who's also the former undisputed 147-pound champion. And I say former because he was stripped of his title and it was given to Jaron Ennis. Terence Crawford took to Twitter to express frustration over what people are saying about him and Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis responds and basically says what I've been saying for a while, which is that people need to stop with this ridiculousness about a fight having been really being offered between Jaron Ennis and Terence Crawford. But we'll talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be in the 147-pound division, where there's a lot of back and forth going on today in Twitter between Jaron Boots Ennis and Terence Bud Crawford over who's ducking who, whether somebody should have been stripped or not stripped. Terence Crawford takes to Twitter, starts something. Jaron Ennis takes to Twitter to call out Terence Crawford over what he said. We'll go over the details and I'll give you my opinion. But before I do, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you're a longtime subscriber and supporter of the channel, thank you for your continued support. It really makes a big difference to the channel. Thank you especially to the people like Jeff Miller, Matty O, Barbara D, and the crew that supports in the super thanks to videos like this, which is a great way to support content creators and doing the content that you like. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing to the channel. We have really good boxing conversations that go on pretty much every day of the week. And today is no different. So Terence Crawford, who was the undisputed champion, was the undisputed champion of the world, put a message out on Twitter for two topics that it seemed like he was discussing. One, I think, was building up and defending Errol Spence Jr. from a lot of things that people are saying about Errol Spence Jr. And I commend him for that. Basically saying that, you know, what's wrong with the boxing world? It's the only sport where a person can have one loss and then all of a sudden they're not worth anything anymore. That is something that a lot of people have been saying about Errol Spence Jr. after he lost to Terence Crawford. And as you know, Terence is going into a rematch with Errol Spence. And that's one of the reasons, or the primary reason, why he got stripped of his IBF title was the fact that he had a rematch clause with Errol Spence that he has to take. And my hat goes off to him for taking the rematch, not trying to get out of the rematch, and supporting Errol Spence Jr. Against a lot of the things that people are out there saying about Errol Spence in the boxing media. He then, however, went in and said something about Jaron Ennis that I think is, number one, I don't believe that it is really fair to Jaron Ennis, and don't think that it really truly reflects what happened. And Jaron Ennis said something to him about it. Now, to get into the specifics of it, Terence Crawford said something to the effect of, Jaron Ennis, is a good fighter, but people can stop this talk about Terence Crawford having ducked Jaron Ennis, and how Jaron Ennis had two opportunities to fight Terence Crawford, but he decided not to take them. So, basically let the kid, let him have his career develop. Jaron Ennis responded and basically said that that's not true. And this narrative that you guys that Terence Crawford keeps spinning is some nonsense, and how the reason why Jaron Ennis got handed the IBF title is because Terence Crawford doesn't want to fight him. Now, here is giving just a little background on this. Common sense would tell you, if you look at it, that Jaron Ennis never had an opportunity to fight Terence Crawford, because Terence Crawford, for the last several years, has been in a prolonged negotiation trying to fight for the undisputed title of the world against Errol Spence Jr. When exactly was Jaron Ennis truly in a position to get a fight with Terence Crawford? He wasn't. But what is Terence Crawford referring to when he says 2 opportunities? He first must be talking about conversations that took place between BLK Prime and Showtime for a fight between Jaron Ennis and Terence Crawford, where BLK Prime, through a representative of theirs, approached Bozy Ennis and approached Terence Crawford and asked if Terence Crawford would be interested in fighting Jaron Ennis. According to the story that's out there, Terence Crawford said, yes, I would be willing to fight him. Then the same people went to Bozy Ennis, who's the father and the manager of Jaron Ennis, and said, would you be interested in fighting Terence Crawford? And they said yes, provided Showtime, who we have a relationship with, knows about it, is involved in the negotiations. BLK Prime, who's now no longer involved in boxing, spoke with Showtime, and nothing came out of that. Why nothing came out of that is up for debate. However, is that really an example of Jaron Ennis turning down a fight with Terence Crawford? Or is it just an example of preliminary conversations between 2 parties not going anywhere? Terence, that is where Jaron Ennis is referring to basically some BS being out there trying to make it look like Jaron Ennis turned down a fight with Errol Spence. Now, when exactly was this? It was between the fight that Terence Crawford had with David Avanesyan and the fight that Terence Crawford had with Errol Spence Jr. Seeing as Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. fought on Showtime and Jaron Ennis fights on Showtime, it's very hard for me or any other reasonable people to believe that Showtime was going to stop that fight and put on a fight between Jaron Ennis and Terence Crawford for a voluntary shot. The other thing that they talk about is Jaron Ennis going the route of the IBF shot, which I can put to rest right now, because Terence Crawford's mandatory title defense for the WBO belt is not even due yet. So Terence Crawford would not have had to fight Jaron Ennis if Jaron Ennis was still ranked #1 in the WBO, because Terence Crawford is what you call the WBO super champion, and he has 18 months in order to have that title defense. And from what I understand, the WBO is still not executed or ordered a mandatory fight for Terence Crawford. Jaron Ennis got to be the mandatory for Terence Crawford faster than by going the IBF route than he would have if he had gone the WBO route, because he still wouldn't be the mandatory. And even if he was, that doesn't mean that Terence Crawford was still going to fight him, because as you know, Terence Crawford is saying that he's not going to be fighting at 147 again. He wants to go to 154 or 168 to chase Canelo Alvarez. So the whole thing is about a bunch of back and forth, blah, blah, blah. The truth of the matter is Terence Crawford has no intention on fighting Jaron Ennis, because he's a young, dangerous fighter who, at this point in time, the money may not be there in a really big pay-per-view fight for him to do it. But to try to label Jaron Ennis and accuse Jaron Ennis of having passed up on the fight, it's just not fair. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.